Hello, everyone, and welcome back into Crypto's News Live. It's me, Omar Bam, aka Crypto, and we have quite a show ahead for you guys on this weekly roundup of what's been going on in cryptocurrency. And I hope you guys do appreciate these weekly updates. I know for me it would be super valuable. I don't always have the time on a daily basis to be following this minute by minute, but I know that throughout the week, quite a number of things, and this week no different for sure, do transpire, and you guys want to stay ahead of things. So I do appreciate you coming back for that. And you can always share the love by hitting that like button, by becoming a producer. Thanks to you guys who support on Patreon. Haven't thanked you guys nearly enough for the efforts you guys do. It really is a huge help, and you guys, I mean, like, I don't even know where the show would be without you Patreon supporters, since it's such a big help, with YouTube only paying like, I don't know, $13 a month is what I've been earning since we relaunched the show. So kind of sad, but I do enjoy putting the show together for you guys, as I mentioned, because it also keeps me on top of what's going on. And I do like to pepper whenever possible any of my own experiences, having been involved in crypto quite deeply since 2015 with you guys. So remember to subscribe if you're new to the show. Remember to share this show with anybody who might be getting into crypto or is interested in what's going on in the news. And I'll try to keep them informed as much as you guys. So let's go ahead and get started here. Good evening, Kevin, and anyone else who might be joining us live. Let's get started by taking a look at the prices here. So what we're really going to look at now is the 7-day price. Since over the last 24 hours, not too much has transpired, but you can see for Ethereum, as you might have guessed from the title, it is up quite a lot. I would definitely call this one a rocketing. Look at the last 7 days. It's up 24.7%, well north of that $3,000 support level or level that we were at. It is almost at $4,000 now, $3,758. We also have Bitcoin just south of $70,000, which it did challenge earlier and surpassed $70,000, just right below that now at $69,263.50. That is up 5.2% over the last 7 days. And we have other climbers as well. Take a look at Solana. Solana is up 15.3% over the last 7 days. And we are currently at an overall market cap for cryptocurrencies today, May 22nd, 2024, of $2.725 trillion. It'll be great to look back on this video in about a decade and be like, wow, that was so low. At least that's my own personal expectation. As always, don't invest based on anything that you hear here. I do try to keep it as objective as possible. Yeah, sometimes you might feel like doing something based on what I say here. Don't do that. Always do more research. I think what's notable here as well to think about is the Ethereum/Bitcoin ratio. This is something that has been bleeding nonstop, it appears. So for the last 24 hours or the last day, you can see that it has been climbing and climbing, meaning Ethereum's performance relative to Bitcoin. Right now, Ethereum is about 0.05 ETH a Bitcoin, and we are still quite away from the all-time high here of Ethereum relative to Bitcoin. But let's move a little further. If we look at the weekly chart, you can see where it picked up right there. We'll talk about why in relation to the news, cover it, especially if you don't know what's going on. And you can see it just ticked up here about 2 days ago and has been doing quite well since. Looks like it's breaking some near-term resistance there, at least on this week. And then on the monthly, looking even more solid on the last 6 months, you can see how it's been bleeding, and now it's been the largest uptick, I guess you could say, since back here, what is this, in January 9th of 2024. So props to you if you have held on. I mean, it has been difficult to hold on to ETH when you look at the performance relative to Bitcoin over this time period, because there was a lot of Bitcoin halving hype. There was a lot of Bitcoin ETF hype. There was meme coin rivalry from smaller retail folks trying to get higher multiple gains, riskier gains, of course. You look at the regulatory landscape surrounding Ethereum and it possibly being a security, and you can see why it has suffered, and people have been cautious to want to hold this. They're looking at the inflation rate of ETH in recent times actually ticking up relative to deflation that we had seen previously, and many other factors. So if you sold, like I can't really blame you. I totally get it. But if you held on, then this is the kind of rewards you tend to see from patience, especially as, I mean, we've lived through this time and time again, as I've said, and you do see this happen where Bitcoin starts things off and then Ethereum takes the reins and really catalyzes the bull market. And so a lot of this is around this ETF approval for Ethereum, which would be like the Bitcoin ETF, except, of course, I think personally it could be quite huge. For example, today you're seeing the London stock market allowing for the trading of ETNs or ETPs, exchange traded products, on there as well. So more are able to acquire these things. Of course, from my understanding, this isn't just for the average person who goes to the stock exchange and able to buy it in London. This is going to be more for institutional and accredited type investors, but still on track, at least in London, in the right direction, I would say, for being able to access this asset. One thing that just happened right now that is being discussed on Twitter, you can see posted here by Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase. Wow, 71 Democrats voted yes, a total victory. I was hearing anything in the 20 or 40 range would be considered a win. This is a resounding win in the House for clear crypto rules. We covered this in our last video about this bill that would set up a better structural foundation for Ethereum regulatory clarity here in the United States. And it was a partisan vote. It passed the House. It still needs to go to Senate, and we'll see if that passes or not. But even if it doesn't, it could still be that there was a lot of language set up around this bill that will help set up more sensible regulation in the future as well. But yeah, quite a huge win. And this is in relation to this bill right here, HR 4763. Statement of Administration Policy. So this was posted today, actually, and it says the administration opposes passage of HR 4763, which would affect the regulatory structure for digital assets in the United States. The administration is eager to work with Congress to ensure a comprehensive and balanced regulatory framework for digital assets, building on existing authorities and which will promote the responsible development of digital assets and payment innovation, help reinforce the United States leadership in the global financial system. So this is talking about how the current Biden administration did not necessarily agree with the way that this bill was set up, but they did say that they would not be vetoing it at the very least, but they did feel like things did need to change. HR 4763 in its current form lacks sufficient protections for consumers, that's how they're framing it, and investors who engage in certain digital asset transactions. The administration looks forward to continued collaboration with Congress on developing legislation for digital assets that includes adequate guardrails for consumers and investors while creating the conditions needed for innovation. And further time will be needed for such collaboration. But Adam Cochran, some I do respect on Twitter, had this to say, boom, there it is, all the proof you need that it isn't just a fluke, because this kind of change in the language and openness toward crypto and exploring it is a hallmark, really, of how things are changing right now and might be impacting the price. The White House bailed on the veto and issued a statement in which they call for productive frameworks to promote digital assets and payment innovation in America. This isn't just about an ETF or one vote. This is an entire change in messaging and strategy. I cannot begin to tell you how big a deal this is. While Warren might continue to fight, the White House has just given other Democrats a pass to now support crypto and blockchain innovation and has backed off on blocking via authority. Maybe the war isn't fully over, but like the Battle of Saratoga in the Revolutionary War, this signals the beginning of the end, a major victory, a shifting of alliances, and enemies without support or resupply. After decades of indecision, confusion, and chilling effects, blockchains in America will finally be open for business. Quite a bit of rhetoric here, but I think you get the point. I think this part right here, this is an entire change in messaging and strategy, is what's of note. It's not nearly as hostile as we have seen from the administration in the past. Ethereum had surged over 17% more on a weekly basis to over $3,600 as favorable regulatory developments increase the likelihood of the ETF approval. So also what's going on here is that there is this ETF that's coming out potentially for Ethereum, multiple applications out there, but two major things first need to be passed before we can see that these ETFs are available on exchanges, one being the S1 registrations and the other being the 19B4 filings, which were requested now by the SEC from these various products or exchanges rather that are hoping to list these products. So we'll get into what those mean in just a minute, but we're seeing right now that traders heavily bought $4,000 calls for May 24th, so in 2 days, which is still higher than the current price of ETH at 3,756. And that means that some traders are expecting the price to rise into that date and on 31st, according to Presto research analyst who wrote a note to CoinDesk, it says here. So as soon as we started hearing that the SEC was asking for these amended 19B4s to be submitted to them, we saw that at least 5 of the potential Ethereum ETF issuers had submitted these amended 19B4s almost immediately. Yesterday, Fidelity, VanEck, Invesco Galaxy, ARC21 Shares, and Franklin all submitted via CBOE. And if you're wondering what exactly had to change in the wording of this, so it had to be amended, the main part is this: neither the trust, nor the sponsor, nor the custodian, nor any other person associated with the trust will, directly or indirectly, engage in action where any portion of the trust's ETH becomes subject to the Ethereum proof of stake validation or is used to earn additional ETH or generate income or other earnings. The trust will not acquire and will disclaim any incidental right, IR, or asset received, for example, as a result of forks, airdrops, and such assets will not be taken into account for purposes of determining net asset value, NAV. So what's interesting here is that it is setting up a way that these products can be available on these exchanges. It's saying, hey, as long as you say you are not going to stake the ETH and try to generate rewards, then this will probably be approved. I mean, there's a reason we're seeing similar language on all these amended 19B4s. So likely this is coming like straight from the SEC themselves. They don't want staking rewards to be granted out to these ETFs. But I think it's very strange, as is being noted by others in the Ethereum community, the way that this is worded. The language is really, really strange. It says that the trust will not directly, indirectly engage in action where any portion of the trust ETH will become subject to the Ethereum proof of stake validation. So that is saying that no portion of the trust ETH can be validated by the way that the ledger currently works, which makes no sense. It seems more likely what they're trying to say here is that it should not be staked, rather than saying that it cannot participate in network validation, which makes absolutely no sense, because that was a funny slip, because it does have to be subject to validation if it's going to be a legitimate piece of ETH, right? That's what these blockchains are all about. Anyway, I do think that the wording, though, is interesting and does set up the groundwork for this to be approved. So I do appreciate this comment by Gronky.eth on X. He explained some of the language here in case you're confused. So what is the 19B4 exchange rule change? This refers to the filing that a national securities exchange like the New York Stock Exchange or the NASDAQ, they submit to the SEC when they want to change rules or introduce new products. In the case of Ethereum ETFs, the exchange needs SEC approval on these filings to list the ETFs. This is essentially the exchange asking for permission to add these new Ethereum products, ETFs, to their trading platform. And the other bit that needs to be approved here is the S1s, or registration statements. This is the initial registration form required for new securities offerings to the public that provides the SEC and potential investors with detailed information about the company's business operations, financial condition, and management. Think like a prospectus, if you've ever seen those for stocks. For ETFs, this document will detail the structure of the fund, its management, and how it tends to replicate the performance of Ethereum. So there's a decision process that says the SEC has a statutory time frame, usually 45 days, but can be delayed up to 240 days to make the initial decision on the 19B4 filings if they approve the rule changes. It technically allows the ETFs to be listed on the exchange, but without the approval of those S1 registration statements, these ETFs cannot be legally sold to investors. So you do need both to be passed. So this is a scenario coming up right now, looking at these amended 19B4 requests, that we could see before the end of the week the approval of these 19B4 amendments to the rules. But we would still need the S1s to go through. And from what I'm reading, it looks like the S1 registration statements could be delayed indefinitely pending approval by the SEC. But the SEC has kind of been dragging their heels quite a bit. It's nice to see them change their tune somewhat with the 19B4s and be more open with the community and the products and everything else. So this, to me, is reason to get more excited that an Ethereum ETF could be passing. That's exactly what we're seeing right. Oh, I have to give a quick shout out here. Oh man, you're one of our new members. I want to welcome Not Luigi for becoming a producer and supporting the show. It's kind of stuff, man, that keeps me coming back week after week and means so much. So I cannot share my appreciation enough for that. And as I've mentioned in the beginning of the video, to all the other Patreons, producers, and those sponsors here on YouTube, thank you very much. So Polymarket is, as I've mentioned, a way that you can see the betting rate going on whether this ETF will be approved by a certain date or not. And on Polymarket, you buy these tokens depending on the outcome of the decision. If you bought the yes token, yes, it passes and it does pass, then your token goes up to the full price of, let's say, $1 for each token that you bought. But if you said, yes, it's going to happen by May 31st, and you bought that token, and it does not pass by then, according to the oracles and the way that they look at their data and the messaging from the SEC and everywhere else that the smart contract is looking at and the inputs, then your token will go to 0 if you are wrong. So it's a way to kind of bet and see what the community is thinking. So we can see this $10.3 million bet that's going on right now. Ethereum ETF approved by May 31st. Right now it's jumped up to a 67% chance. When I last did a video about a week ago, we were looking at a 10% chance. So a huge spike that we're seeing right now. And you can even mess around here and see your potential returns if it comes out to yes or no. What is going on with my mouse here? Oh, there it is. So you can see, like, if you bet $200 and the outcome is yes, you have the chance to win 51% on what you invested, and so on. And you can also read comments as well. And a lot of people seem confused here. Does it pass if, like, the 19B4 passes but the S1s don't? I'm going to go with no, because that doesn't mean that the ETFs will be available and really truly approved for listing. But there is confusion here, but I would wager that doesn't really apply. Anyway, 67% chance here. My thoughts is that this Ethereum ETF, completely S1 and 19B4s amended, both do not get approved by May 31st. I think the S1s, looking at a lot of what I've read in languages and commentators, S1 will take longer to develop. And like I mentioned, the SEC has dragged their heels. So by May 31st, probably no. But because of some of these new things that are happening in the House of Representatives with these bills and so on, it seems that the SEC is finally turning more positively toward Ethereum, looking at what's going on here and how they stop dragging as much. So by this period, maybe not, but then they're probably getting to work right now. So by June 30th, there's another bet going on. This one has less than $1 million right now, but 72% chance by June 30th. That one I actually think is more likely. Not completely likely, of course, because of pending delays, but more likely. So if I had to bet approved by May 31st, I'm going to go with no. So to me, like, if I was able to bet here, I would probably bet no. And I don't know, if I bet, like, I don't know, $10 million, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 zeros, and I could potentially be looking at about $141 million. Not bad, not too shabby. And unfortunately, that is not available in my region. Polymarket is not available because I'm in the least free, one of the least free places when it comes to financial freedom. Depositing is unavailable in your region. And it says if you're using a VPN and you are in an approved region, just turn off your VPN and try again. So I'm not sure how exactly you would get around this. I'm sure many do, but it's a shame that we can't participate as much in these kinds of prediction markets, but at least we can gauge some data off of them. So also, I thought this was notable. I found this on the ETH Finance subreddit. Oh, thanks, man. Wishing you well too, Not Luigi. I'm glad you're back. How long have you been watching the show, Not Luigi? I would love to know. Explain like on 5, please. Why did the BTC ETF start right after the deadline? Got approved like right away. But we need to wait for some S1 filings, which could take weeks. What's the difference here? And why were they ready for BTC and not for ETH? One reading of the events, response Hwarog, is that the SEC did nothing in the last few months and wanted to reject the applications. It definitely seemed that way. Then last week, the political winds changed and suddenly they have to approve the application. So everyone is scrambling to get things ready for the last minute approval. They focus on what needs to be ready until the 23rd to approve all applications, and we'll do the rest, S1s, afterwards. Not sure if this is correct, but this is the interpretation which makes the most sense to me. Because up until Monday, says Kitchen Pudding, it seems that even the SEC wanted to reject. Then Joe Biden called Gary Gensler, telling him to change course. So no one was ready. There were even reports that people contacted the department that dealt with S1 filings, and the people there were unaware of the changes in policy. Basically, the last minute change in policy means that there is not enough time to do everything, just the things that need to be done for the deadline. This is how I understand it. Feel free to correct me. And Fizalix said, I don't know if it was for the S1 filings, but as far as I know, the BTC ETFs did not start trading right away. It was relatively quick, but there was some time between approval and trading. Yeah, that's true. But also, I don't think he's understanding that what we're talking about here is full approval with S1s and the amended 19B4s both. Anyway, things looking more positive in that regard. I'm super stoked to see what goes on here. I never sold any ETH personally, so I am happy to see it that it's gone up somewhat. And I'm hearing all sorts of calls again, as we see, for this price Bitcoin, this price Bitcoin. I'll reserve judgment on that, but I do feel that this pass is going to be quite higher moving towards the end of the year than maybe even I had expected. U.S. authorities will transfer SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, to California prison. He has been held since he was revoked bail on August 2023. He's been held in Brooklyn at the Metropolitan Detention Center. And he is going to be moved closer to his parents, which I think makes sense since you're going to want to go visit your son for the next 25 years. He's going to be spending in prison. And they're going to move him over to the Mendota area in California, a federal correction institution. He did want to stay in Brooklyn for reasons. It looks like this isn't happening as they're preparing to move him to California as we speak, where he will be roughly 200 kilometers from his parents' California home, and that facility currently houses 931 inmates. It's funny that he had apparently wanted to, or his lawyer said he wanted to stay in Brooklyn since the conditions were so heinous as to not allow a vegan anything other than peanut butter jelly sandwiches to eat, and he did not get maybe enough Adderall in his time there to help his mental conditions. But I somehow feel like it might be easier to get that stuff in California anyway, right? If you're a vegan, California. So I don't know, maybe it's like some like reverse psychology thing. Like, no, please don't send me to California to be around my parents. It was funny. I don't know if you guys were paying attention back then as well. I'm sure you guys were since you've watched the show for a while. But he was staying with his parents before his bail was revoked. And he was calling witnesses, possibly threatening his ex-girlfriend, Caroline Ellison. Shut up. Shut your trap. She did not. She is still awaiting sentencing and so on. It's expected the show have leniency since she did cooperate with investigators to break down SBF. I will update you further on that, but that's the latest in that saga. Bitcoin is coming to MetaMask, according to sources. So previously, if you have the Ethereum, mainly Ethereum, I guess you'd call it, native browser wallets, MetaMask, you could hold Bitcoin in it if you bought kind of like faux Bitcoin, FAUX Bitcoin. And that's like wrapped Bitcoin. So Bitcoin that's been locked up and generated this token to represent the Bitcoin that's locked up. And you trade that Bitcoin that trades for the same price pretty much as Bitcoin. But if you are a fan of actual Bitcoin and holding actual Bitcoin, that may be coming and becoming available on MetaMask very soon. According to one person familiar with the matter telling CoinDesk this access could arrive within the next month. So I think that is useful information to know, especially if you do hold Bitcoin and you hold Ethereum and you want to more consolidate into one application. You trust MetaMask, a longtime player, then that could be useful. At the same time, it can be risky holding all your assets in one area. If you're hacked, then it's easier to get access to those funds. There's always pros and cons that you have to weigh yourself. But let me know what you guys think about that. It feels like they're super late on that one, but you can see MetaMask, of course, being Ethereum native, that they wouldn't really focus as much on that. They've focused more on support for NFTs, for trading directly across different kinds of decentralized exchanges through MetaMask, taking a cut, and so on. Another quick thing I want to mention here is in relation to Solana. So if you're someone who's holding Solana, then this might be useful to know. There has been a proposal put up that looks like it's going to pass that will be removing the 50% of fees that are burnt during priority when you're trying to get your transaction ahead of the line. I guess you could say 50% was previously burnt and 50% was rewarded to validators. Now this proposal will make it so that the validators get 100% of what's going on with of these priority fees. This is done to try to disincentivize side deals that are done. So if you want to get your transaction put out, why would you, for example, pay the 50% burn fee and another 50%, so 100% fee, only 50% of that goes to the validator, when the validator might be like, bro, I'm a miner, and I know you're trying to send some crazy amount of transactions. Instead, you give me 75% of whatever it is, and I'll make sure your transaction gets ahead of the line. So I get 25% more fees, you get ahead of the line, and it's a win-win for everybody. But it creates, I guess, a situation where you could call it bad actors get to front-run transactions, make more profitability, and so on. So this hopes to resolve that by changing this. It's being called greed, of course, by those who are supporting this, greed by the validators who just want to earn more, and potentially leading to a situation you have more inflation rather than 50% of those fees being burnt, those priority fees being burnt, then 50% more will be out there that creates more inflation. It could be run away as the price goes up and more tokens become available and so on. So I guess you could call it contentious, but right now it seems to have quite a huge amount of transfers and vote of yes, 54 pages. From what I had read, there's only about 3 pages of no's in favor of this proposal. And you do see that people that have more of a stake in these kinds of proposals, who are more active in the community and improvements to protocols, that do vote more, and they might be the ones that are voting more here, that stand to gain a lot. But I think, frankly, it does seem like it's smart for the network to consider these things for the long-term health and stability of the network. It's something that you've seen even Ethereum try to struggle with, these kinds of side deals as well. MEV it's called, and it's a step in the right direction. Of course, for short-term price thinkers, it might not be the best. So just wanted to give you a heads up on that one. This was a super crazy security concern, and if you don't know, you absolutely should be aware of this if you are a user of Windows. So Microsoft, and I have to mention this because it does relate to crypto, but Microsoft is getting ready to unveil a feature. It's being reported and was announced by them that will basically be screenshotting every moment of activity that you do on Windows and storing that locally on the device as a way for you to go and search your history of what you've done on your computer. So you could look up whatever, pictures, files, and just ask, and it'll pull it up for you. But this will again be living on the user's device. Microsoft said they will not be getting a copy of this. But still, when you're talking about cybersecurity, this is a problem, because if your computer is hacked and the hackers or exploits, whatever, know where to look to get that data or unencrypt that data or whatever it is, they could suddenly see all your passwords if you're using Windows to input them into the computer. It's like putting spyware directly from the OS from Microsoft into your computer that could render your funds stolen. It could be your identity. It could be anything, right? Because every moment will be screenshot and lived on your device. So super concerning. We're not hearing about any capability yet to disable this feature, but surely that will be coming because of the huge backlash that we're hearing from cybersecurity experts, technologists, and everyone else that is flagging issues with this. And like, why do we want this? I know that I don't want it. And if I have the ability to disable that on Windows, I will immediately the minute it does. And if I don't have the ability to disable it and it continues to come out as it does, I will move away personally from Windows permanently and seek elsewhere to use things. So I just want to make sure you're aware of that, this new recall AI feature, because it has the potential to impact you. Craig Wright, who claimed to be Satoshi Nakamoto, has officially in UK court been called a fraud in a case between Craig Stephen Wright and the Crypto Open Patent Alliance, which features BTC Core developers, names such as Peter Wheely. I don't even know how to pronounce it, to be honest. In all my years, I never learned how to pronounce it. Peter Wheely, Marco Patrick Falk. You have Eric Lombroso, Peter Todd, Greg Maxwell. You have Block Inc., you have Blockstream Corporation, you have Coinbase, CB Payments, so many going up against Craig Wright, and the judge has sided with them. I guess you could call them the plaintiffs. No, the defendants in the BTC Core claim. So I'll just read a little bit of the abstract here in the front so you know what's going on and how scathing it looks against Mr. Wright here, or Dr. Craig Stephen Wright, who is claimed to have so many PhDs, who claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto, i.e. he claims to be the person who adopted that pseudonym. Who wrote and published the first version of the Bitcoin white paper on the 31st of October in 2008, who wrote and released the first version of the Bitcoin source code, and he claimed to create the Bitcoin system. Dr. Wright also claims to be the person with a unique intellect, with numerous degrees and PhDs in a wide range of subjects, the unique combination of which led him, so it's said, to devise the Bitcoin system. Thus, Dr. Wright presents himself as an extremely clever person. However, in my judgment, he is not nearly as clever as he thinks. In both his written evidence and in days of oral evidence under cross-examination, I am entirely satisfied that Dr. Wright lied to the court. Entirely satisfied that Dr. Wright lied to the court extensively and repeatedly. Most of his lies related to the documents he had forged, which purported to support his claim. All his lies and forged documents were in support of his biggest lie, his claims to be Satoshi Nakamoto. Many of Dr. Wright's lies contained a grain of truth, which is sometimes said to be the mark of an accomplished liar. But there were many which did not and were outright lies. As soon as one lie was exposed, Dr. Wright resorted to further lies and evasions. The final destination frequently turned out to be either Dr. Wright blaming some other, often unidentified person for his predicament, or what can only be described as techno-babble delivered by him in the witness box. Although as a person with expertise in IT security, Dr. Wright must have thought his forgeries would provide convincing evidence to support his claim to be Satoshi, or some other point of detail, and would go undetected. The evidence shows, as I explained below and in the appendix, that most of his forgeries turned out to be clumsy. Indeed, certain of Dr. Wright's responses in cross-examination effectively acknowledged that point. From my recollection, at least twice he indicated if he had wanted to forge a document, he would have done a much better job. If Dr. Wright's evidence was true, he would be a uniquely unfortunate individual, the victim of a very large number of unfortunate coincidences, lightning striking 1,000 times, all of which went against him, and were the victim of a number of conspiracies against him. The true position is far simpler. It is, however, far from simple because Dr. Wright has lied so much over so many years that on certain points it can be difficult to pinpoint what exactly happened. Like, you remember hearing that his team was flooding the courts with paperwork, millions and millions of pages of paperwork that they could possibly never go through to delay judgment and to obfuscate things. Those difficulties do not detract from the fact that there is a very considerable body of evidence against Dr. Wright being Satoshi, to that extent that it is said that there is evidence supporting his claim. It is at best very questionable or of very dubious relevance, or entirely circumstantial, and at worst it is fabricated or based on documents I am satisfied have been forged on a grand scale by Dr. Wright. These fabrications and forgeries were exposed in the evidence which I received during the trial, yada, 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 yada. But yeah, if you want to know about the history This is a great 231 page document that you can find on the COPA versus Wright judgment. Look it up for yourselves. Maybe have like ChatGPT 4.0 describe it to you. Have you guys checked out ChatGPT 4.0? It is so cool. I think the future is going to be stranger than we can imagine for sure. Anyway, the judgment was first that Dr. Wright is not the author of the Bitcoin white paper. Second, Dr. Wright is not the person who adopted or operated under the pseudonym Satoshi Nakamoto in the period between 2008 and 2011. Third, Dr. Wright is not the person who created the Bitcoin system. And fourth, Dr. Wright is not the author of the initial versions of the Bitcoin software. So this is not something that will likely lead to any sort of jail time or prison sentencing, but it will likely lead to a financial recompensation that Wright will have come due at some point. And he is, or has announced on Twitter, that he will be appealing this, of course. But yeah, another note of him not being Satoshi. And that's by the courts, right? This is not just me in 2016 on YouTube saying this guy looks like a phony after coming out with his special announcing Satoshi Nakamoto. This is a court who has determined this with bodies of evidence, much of which might have been forged badly, according to even Mr. Wright himself. Anyway, today's a special day. We are celebrating Bitcoin Pizza Day on May 22nd, 2010, when Laszlo Hanyecz had purchased the first 2 pizzas ever in the first commercial transaction to use Bitcoin in 2010 to buy an actual product, when he had posted on a forum asking for someone to take up a deal of accepting Bitcoin for ordering pizza from a local Papa John's for him in Jacksonville, Florida, and this was agreed to. Later, he had posted that this transaction did go through Laszlo. And if you go to the Jacksonville Papa John's, one of them, I'm not sure exactly which one to be honest, but the one where the meetup, Bitcoin meetup takes place, they have a plaque there where you can see May 22nd, 2010, Papa John's, maker of the famous Bitcoin pizzas, and you can find that posted there. It would be pretty cool to go out there for a Bitcoin meetup if they still happen and take a picture with this plaque. Have you guys done that? That would be pretty cool. Anyway, that's him right there. With the 2 pizzas that were purchased with his sons. And this is something that just gets commemorated as a piece of Bitcoin. It feels like we have so many holidays between things that Satoshi has said or posted or Laszlo, so many different events. We should definitely take the time to commemorate and remember those, as they sometimes are the only way to recall bits of history that people might not hear about and realize just how rich the Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency history has gotten over the last decade plus. And I thought it was interesting that there was this was posted on CoinDesk a little while back. I think this was posted this year, 2024, about this. It was talking about how there was a FAQ that was posted on the Bitcoin.com website by a Bitcoin developer named Marty Malmy, and he had written apparently something quoting Satoshi responses to earlier inquiries. He wrote, "Bitcoin is valued for the things it can be exchanged to, just like all the traditional paper currencies are. When the first user publicly announces that he will make a pizza for anyone who gives him 100 Bitcoins, then he can use Bitcoins as a payment to some extent, as much as people want pizza and trust his announcement. A pizza-eating hairdresser who trusts him as a friend might then announce that she started accepting Bitcoins as a payment for fancy haircuts, and the value of the Bitcoin would be higher. Now you could buy pizzas and haircuts with them. When pizzas have become accepted widely enough, he could retire from his pizza business and still be able to use his Bitcoin savings and look pretty good with a nice haircut potentially as well." Whatever else would be accepted for Bitcoin. But yeah, this might have been one of those quotes that had inspired Laszlo to go ahead and set up this as a way to give out the Bitcoin, apparently because he might have been the first person to use graphics cards or GPUs to mine Bitcoin instead of CPUs like you saw Satoshi potentially doing early on, giving him a leg up and acquiring more Bitcoin than others. And maybe he wanted to give back to the community, say no ill will, by giving out Bitcoin, 10,000 Bitcoin in exchange for pizza, which is what he did. And there was other potential history that he was involved with as well. So did you guys hear that? Sounded like there was a hose outside of my window. That's weird. Anyway, It looks like he was the first to translate Satoshi's code for Apple's operating system, allowing a greater number of people to run the actual Bitcoin software. He was a frequent commentator on the Bitcoin Talk forum. And that was the main place when I got involved with cryptocurrencies, where the discussion around all cryptocurrencies took place. It wasn't on X. Not even Twitter, right? It wasn't even on Twitter. And Reddit was just kind of really coming to its own when it came to cryptocurrencies. But Bitcoin Talk was where you went. If you were launching a coin and it was going to be proof of work and mining from the first block, you posted about it and gave documentation and links on Bitcoin Talk. It was pretty darn cool to be involved in many of these projects and mining them on the first day early on. And it's a shame that things have kind of become so dispersed these days. But yeah, I would love to know, what are your guys' favorite sources for knowing what are the first things coming out or how to get started with a certain coin? Certainly seems that they're not as centralized, and maybe that's a good thing as they were in earlier days. But yeah, props to Laszlo. From my understanding, and as you probably understand from having heard all of this, he still has Bitcoin left. He didn't give away all his Bitcoin. Oh shoot, I'm getting a sort of alert. Oh, there's a tornado. Oh, shoot. Take shelter now in a basement or an interior room on the lowest floor of a sturdy building if you're outdoors in a mobile home. It's getting weird out there. I think there's a hurricane. There's a tornado, guys. I think I should probably wrap up this video. I'm sorry. We got to wrap it up quick. Okay. Yeah, there's Michael Saylor with his pizzas. All right. Okay, now I got to go. All right. Check this video out for yourselves.
This week, House Republicans
I love you. Quote of the day. There's no influence like the influence of a habit.
To safeguard our American values.
I love you guys. Take care.
By passing my bill, the CBDC, or the central bank digital currency